Welcome to Intuitive Human. Our mission is to normalize intuitive experiences for humanity. We are connecting with people just like you, excavating their highly impactful, view-shifting, intuitive experiences, diving deeply into what it actually feels like when you go beyond the veil. In this interview, Natalia Vásquez shares her clairvoyant and geomantic empath abilities of inner seeing and being called across continents where photographic memories from another time unlock a deep inner healing. We hope you see your own reflection in these stories, empirically proving intuition really does exist, and in such a way so that you may discover your own intuitive human.
Hi, Crystal. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. So my name is Natalia Vásquez, and I am a visual artist and a holistic practitioner. I've created space virtually and physically called Heart and Brain Studios, and it's specifically intended to awaken people to their intuitive connection, their creative connection through restful practices. So the importance of rest and relaxation to be able to access their intuition, and then also to return to their innate sense of creativity. My work as a visual artist, my personal artwork, focuses on the psycho-spiritual processes from darkness to light. I'm 39 years old. I was born in the Dominican Republic, Colombian and Dominican descent, but I was raised in Miami. I was young, the intuitive connection started, so I was about 5 when things started coming through that I knew of, but then a clear visual with a spiritual being started when I was like 7, and then different moments in life. You know, they say like the 7-year thing. So I definitely had another awakening kind of at like 14, where it was just like, you know, there's so much more beyond just the material.
So tell us more about what that 7-year thing is again.
Okay, so the 7-year thing, and this is just based off of my understanding, is that, you know, every 7 years we go through different spiritual processes, kind of a purification and cleansing, and that also that our blood changes within a 7-year period. So I can definitely see that mapped out in external experiences in my life as well. Where at 7, for example, like I renounced the religion that was, you know, kind of, it wasn't really imposed on me, but I just renounced that the need to have another human being to connect with a higher force.
Okay.
And I remember that clearly, being like, I denounce this this belief. And then at that point, I also like started seeing like the spiritual beings. And then at 14, it was just another kind of realization. I was just in a classroom and I was just like, oh, there's something much more to life than just this material thing. And then at like 21, I was in like full alcoholic mode. And then at 23, I moved overseas. And it just, yeah, I can see those kind of chunks of time.
The pattern is evident.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was asking about your reference of the 7-year thing because in these interviews for Intuitive Human, I'm tracking hormonal changes and shifts as they relate to a 7-year pattern.
Oh, amazing.
And so I'm very curious about the age of reason is 7 in the Catholic faith, why they picked that, the age of autonomy, pre-puberty, 12, 13, maybe 11 if, you know, the hormones are kind of shifting with the food and everything. And then like basically 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, so forth, 42, 49, even in both genders or all genders, if we can say it like that, to see if there's any correlation. So when the things that we're going to talk about today, which include geomantic, being a geomantic empath, which is location sensitivity, as well as any of the intuitive experiences.
So I was partially in Miami, where I was raised. Many things happened in Prague, Czech Republic. They started happening, some things happened in my own bed. Like I mentioned, one thing was just like this realization in a classroom. Another situation happened on a bus, museum, at a concentration camp. Kind of living normal daily life activities where it could have easily been mistaken that I was going crazy or I was, you know, something was happening, because it was except for the bed situation and public situations, it was just like living your normal life, doing normal life things, and then whoosh, something happens.
And one thing that I always like to ask, because I think it's a common experience that we do feel crazy, that that we have to like check ourselves, and we have to check our friends and even contrast and compare stories if we are able to find other people who have similar experiences, that we're not crazy. So how did you know that you weren't crazy?
For a long time, I didn't.
Okay.
For a long time, I thought that I was, and that I recognized my mind going off the rails, and I recognized that I did not fit in with society, even with family, or with
feeling the isolation,
feeling the
of the
isolation
experience,
for sure.
Seems to be common as well.
Yeah, I felt completely isolated.
Do you feel like there was any necessary readiness or preparedness that throughout your life that might have given you more access to these intuitive experiences that you did end up experiencing?
I'm a survivor of trauma from sexual violence. So sexual violence trauma affects your body, affects your inner space. So there's really no place to escape to. It did prepare me because it made me more sensitive. Because I disconnected from my body, I was able to energetically see. And even though my vision was affected physically, I was able to see intuitively. Okay. And I was able to feel, feel other people's emotions, feel when something was off in a space, feel when systems aren't working, which, partially has made me quite rebellious. But on the other hand, it's like, has given me this readiness to fight for truth, to defend a universal truth. So I would say trauma is part of the readiness, just being open to that. And then part of the readiness was also, I was in my early 20s, mid 20s at this point, and I was suicidal. That's when it was able to really kick in, when I just hit, it's not even rock bottom, it's like underground, buried sensation. And from that point of complete darkness, I reconnected to that spark within. There was that internal hope, and part of that was knowing to never lose hope. If you lose hope, then you're done. If you lose faith, then you're done. And then a more kind of concrete thing, which is still spiritual but concrete, was in my bed in Prague, Czech Republic, paralyzed in insomnia, a voice kicked in and said, release your jaw. It said, the voice kicked in and said, release your jaw and follow your breath. Everything we have is inside of us, and there's been that kind of comprehension somewhere intuitively my whole life. So it just, that inner voice started guiding me and started lifting up layers, opening spaces, showing me how memories and experiences affected my physical body, how thoughts affected my breath flow, like, all this stuff. That was the healing, the real healing, like on the internal world.
So then let's go ahead and get into your stories about the Czech Republic and about these locations and how you felt or saw them in visions on buses and all of that kind of stuff. And I'll say it again, the geomantic empath, which is a location-based sensitivity in the world where you don't have a family history from that part of the world. And so that's the curious part about this whole thing with you, I think, that you went to this part of the world and then all of a sudden you're feeling these things more at this intuitive level. So go ahead, it's exciting, share with us.
I have a very strong connection with what is now the Czech Republic. I moved to Prague intuitively. I had been twice before, but it was by the point that I moved, I was having dreams every night. And even
about
that location, but I didn't even recognize it. It was just like heartstring, like pulling me, and it was this feeling. It was this actual pulling. I am quite an intuitive person, so I was like, okay, well, if I got to go there, then I'm going to go there. I remember when I was 9 years old, standing in front of the television, or around 8, 9, and the Berlin Wall coming down. And I had such a strong connection to that. And just, I was amazed by the young people, you know, just with all their might, like breaking down that wall. And I felt like I'm goosebumped right now.
Me
like
too.
I felt such a strong connection to that barrier being removed. And then, you know, it was years. And, you know, throughout my studies, there were definitely key points in history. The history of human suffering has been very important in my inner feeling. But then the Holocaust was always something that really just drew me in. And when the History Channel first came out, and I would just like watch all these documentaries about like Hitler and the invasion, and it was just something that kind of, I felt like I knew it. I felt like it was part of me somehow. Even after I moved back, so I lived in Prague for 10 years, I would, and while I was there, I would just get flashes every day, get like pictures, I'm a photographer, but like get images of like little nooks and crannies of like random streets. So it wasn't even like a whole street view, it was like a very detailed space, and it was like a sign or nothing really with words specifically, but it was just like images. And that connection remains, you know, like the connection to the countryside, the connection to the feeling of the land when I was there. There was definitely a lot of like old spiritual activity for transmutation that's happening there, you know, like not just within the buildings, but like within that area of lands. You know, there's all the wars, there's a lot of trauma that's happened there. That location has always called to me. And it actually physically relocated me without knowing the language, without knowing the climate. I'm a tropical girl.
Right.
Without knowing the huge changes that would happen. I moved there for 10 years.
Where were you when the visions kind of came?
So on the way to Terezin, it was more like the blur of the trees. I have a connection with the poplar trees. They're these like long trees that are everywhere in the Czech Republic and in Germany and like those parts of. But I just remember like seeing, there's like small hills, but it's like hilly, but very calm, and like areas of flatness, and just seeing these like poplar trees and just like the energy of them radiating. That just started like filtering and like transmitting poems, not good ones, you know, like not like ones that like I'm not a writer or anything, but just like about like the suffering of humanity and the strength of the human spirit. So that was on the way to Terezin, where I would get that. And then in Auschwitz, it was the visuals that we were in the room of Dr. Mengele's twin experiments. I remember just having these images of these twins, and then feeling I may have been one of them, you know, and then just the visuals specifically connected to little nooks and crannies of the Czech Republic. They were more like pops of images with a highly charged pulling from the heart space to go back there.
Okay.
And to go back there is also interesting because it's not necessarily going back there from me in this life. But even when I went there on that trip, I was like, whoa, highly charged, and remember like, okay, I know this place. To add to that, because these images that, you know, did come through dreams and like just little pops of visual throughout the day, they took me back there, but then it was in the Czech Republic that I was able to lift all the layers that were repressing memories from this life.
Okay.
So it was kind of like a double healing. It was like, go back to remember some traumatic past situations from this life in a completely different place, climate, culture, language, where basically all my senses as I knew them no longer worked.
And tell us a little bit more about the 9-year-old you watching the Berlin Wall be destroyed.
I know that place. Like I know why this is happening.
I see.
I know, and it was more like I know the history that led up to this moment.
Okay.
And finally, this moment is happening. They just built a wall and separated families who were used to going across the street to visit their family member. Like, and just not understanding how there are dark systems in place that allow for this to happen, and then how asleep humanity has been throughout history to allow things like this, and then on to the other, experiences that I've always felt very connected with, Native American cleansing, like slavery and the cleansing of different populations, where it's just like, what are we doing?
I'm wondering, in the space that we're sharing here, if you have a history, a family history at all, anywhere in the lineages of oppression that you might know about, of enslavement, oppression, because I know you mentioned growing up as with privilege, and not necessarily wanting. Has that always been the case for your family, like in your DNA and in your collective history of your lineages? Do you know?
The Dominican Republic is the first landing place of a lot of the slave ships, right? So there's, a mix. There's also the Taínos from that region that were there. So as far as my knowing in this life, I know that I have like Spanish and Portuguese background, but the connection that I've always felt has been the feeling of oppression. And I don't know if it's because I was able to relate, because my sexual violence in my life started when I was a baby.
Okay.
So I just felt oppressed my whole life.
Right.
And I felt like the privilege wasn't enough. And like it just, there's nothing to overcome.
Right.
No material thing given to you can transform that amount of oppression.
And how, like, explaining all of that for us, how do you feel in your body in this moment, in the solar plexus or in your belly?
Yeah, so I'm still processing a lot of things in this life from those areas. In this very moment, lower belly feels heavy, dense, and solar plexus feels like there's a pain in there. There's pain in there for sure.
Feeling it in my body.
You're feeling it.
Yeah. As you talked about it all. So just wanted to take a regrounding moment.
Thank you.
To reconnect.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So let me ask you a couple more questions about the voice that you heard that said, release your jaw and follow the breath. And was that voice like through the ears, or was it through the heart, or through the skin, or was it echoey? Like, what can you share with us about the voice, your intuitive voice?
Okay, so it is connected from the heart space, echoing and resonating like in the center of like my mind space. And it's just like, and it's firm. It's like, and like, do the thing. Do the thing.
Which is release your jaw.
In that point, it was release your jaw.
It's like the heart is listening, and then it goes up and then resonates in the mind, or?
Yeah, it's not like the heart is listening. It's like the heart is the space. The heart is the space. And then, but it's also connected to this like collective mind space, collective heart space. And it just like echoed in the kind of auditory zone.
Okay.
But it was like, boom.
And it was so clear.
It was very clear.
Like,
it was I was like,
indisputable.
My life was just like, as soon as nighttime came and the lights would go off, which I couldn't turn off the lights. I didn't sleep with the lights off until just a couple years ago. Okay. To be honest. Right. And I feel like that's another important thing to mention. Like we take things as they come, right? Yeah. So like paralyzed, and it was just like, release your jaw. And like at that point, I thought I was gonna die of a tumor. At that point, I had massive headaches where, I was getting like slurred, like hearing loss, like all kinds of physical things started happening.
And you had mentioned before about your eyes, your physical eyes not being able to see, right?
Yeah. And I remember this happened through the healing process, where I remember at a point in my childhood when I was like 9, I remember choosing not to see.
I was curious with you with regards to the vision aspect, and then now the hearing and these physical dysfunctions that might be related to the trauma, but it sounds like you already are aware of that level of possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is amazing to see how things start turning back on again. Because
when you really like air it out. And how would you say the experience of allow is? Yeah. If we just like talk about like what is that moment, because it does seem like a choice point, and we're creating some pathways and some tools for integration and what that means here at Intuitive Human when we're experiencing these healing processes and or these intuitive, really strong intuitive processes. And it does seem like there comes a choice point, especially when you're meeting these places in you, whether it be a really strong intuitive experience or a healing experience or something like that, where there's choice point. And the choice point is surrender, which becomes this allow thing. And this, I don't want to give you words. I want to hear your words. I'll tell you more in a second. Or this retreat. How has the experience of allowing occurred for you?
Crying is a huge cleanse.
Okay.
And it's important to cry. Another thing, trembling and shaking through the practice of this, what I can call now kind of like a yogic sleep, but just through this practice that happened in my bed, hours where I would just like see myself, where I was no longer in it and I can see it and I could see my body healing. Part of the time it was shaking, trembling, noticing the changes in the breath as different emotions are coming through, because different emotions change your breathing patterns, and just letting it be without the need to control. Faith and trust in the spiritual support team, knowing that I was never alone and that they were there like guiding that, allowing the dreams. Allowing your dreams to inform you.
But the invitation would be, if you can't cry, if you can't shake or tremble or allow these emotions to freely go, how do you do that? Inquire, go deeper, find a quiet space, and just know that things are possible and weird stuff happens. And allow the weird, man.
It's like your body is knowing what to do to allow, again, that energy to release.
And allow the unwinding.
I would just lay there and like repeat things and accept things and repeat things. And my left leg uncontrollably would just start like, and I don't know if the person who was, there had experienced that, because seriously for like 3 hours, I was repeating things and my left leg was just like moving. And it's like, that's weird.
Right.
That's weird.
It's a little weird.
It's a little weird.
A little unusual.
But our natural reaction is to want to be like,
control the weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we have to allow the
weird.
Yeah.
Allow the weird.
Exactly.
Be crazy.
To be weird in a safe place. And if that means with a friend, or if that means by yourself, or however that looks like to you, to create safety. But there comes a level of true acceptance that the body has an intelligence, the mind is a controller, and to kind of release and allow into the natural intelligence, whatever that is, and then you can even ask that. That will help us kind of accept our weirdness, and then also for it to become less weird. So we're really focused here to say weird is cool, like we're fine with that, and creating a relationship where weird's not so weird anymore. That these intuitive experiences come as a part of acceptance and authentic relating to ourselves, and allowing that unwinding, however it looks, will get you closer to your weirdness and your authentic self. Do you think intuitive experiences are reserved for special magical people, or that as a part of the human experiences, we all have it?
We all have it. There are layers upon layers of information that tries to cover that up in most people. So oftentimes, from my experience, talking with people personally, there's something that tunes us back into that. And that something is not always an easy experience. So the reconnecting to the gift that some maybe hurtful experiences present to us to reconnect to our intuitive selves is part of the process of healing.
Well, thank you for your time today. I appreciated your story, and I hope that people recognize and see themselves in aspects of it that will help them learn to be weird, learn to go inside, directly relate, and create amazing opportunities inside of their intuitive humans. So thank you for being an intuitive human.
Thank you so much, Crystal. I'm happy to be here. Thank you. Namaste.